Welcome back, everybody, to His Heartbeat. Great to be here with y'all again. And we have a topic that we have touched on, but it's been a while. And I feel like our guest today, Katie Jones. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like Katie's going to bring some new ideas, kind of a fresh wind. Turning on my lights, y'all. Those are video. Forgot to do that. You can see me now. Yeah, so let's go ahead and dive in. Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me. I love talking about this topic, but that definitely was not a part of my story many years ago. Money was not something that I've always had a passion for. My journey actually starts kind of back in college when I was working at a property management firm and was helping out with rental properties. Other people would come to us with their homes and say, we need help managing this to find tenants, to keep maintenance up, and all these things. And from a young age, I was kind of doing this the last few years in college. And then when I graduated, I got my real estate license and became a leasing agent. And I found it really fascinating what everybody was doing with real estate and how they were investing in these properties and making some little bit of income while they weren't doing much, right? They didn't have to necessarily trade a lot of their time for money. We were doing a lot of that for them. And I just found that very intriguing. And I kind of went down this journey of what would it look like if, when I graduate from college, if I started investing in real estate? Is that something I could do? And I started learning everything that I could. And of course, if you want to invest in anything, you need to have financial resources. And
Yeah.
so, sort of out of a necessity, I became well versed in good money management because I was like, I'm going to become a real estate investor. So I need to save money for this. And I need to know how to budget and do all these things in order to have the money to go and do this. And so, my husband and I, we did meet during college, and 2 years after college, when we had gotten married, we basically bought our very first rental property only 3 months after we got married. And
Wow.
we're like, we're going to do this. And yeah, I started blogging around that time just to share a little bit more about our experience as real estate investors. Like, here I am, I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to document it and share with others because we were only 24 and we had lots of people who were like, how are you doing this? And so I kind of just started sharing like it really starts with a budget and having good money management skills in order to have the money to invest, whether it is real estate or in the stock market or anywhere else. And at the same time, I've always been a Christian. I've always had a pretty strong faith. I went to a Christian college out here in Colorado, and so that's always been a big part of my journey and I mean my testimony ultimately. And I was writing a lot on my blog about what it meant to be like a faith first or like faith focused real estate investor. Like, how do I love my tenants as a Christian landlord? Like, what does that look like? And
Mm.
practical steps of how we could do it. And it really it kind of morphed into this whole like talking about biblical money management and just kind of spun into this whole thing that now today I am working one-on-one with clients to help them just learn how to manage their money in light of the gospel. I had a lot of bumps along the road, which I'm sure we will talk about, but yeah, my blog started in 2018 and now I've been coaching officially since 2020 and here we are like 5 years later. So it's kind of crazy.
Okay, well, you gave us the outline here. So
Hmm.
we'll back up. So you got married young, right?
Hmm.
And now I read that your husband, he is a youth pastor, or he was, or
He
both.
is. Yeah, so he is currently a youth pastor. Actually, at the time that we're recording this, we're in a very interesting like period in our lives. We are actually moving to a new church in a new state, and he's going to be a
Oh,
next
wow.
generation pastor, but
Oh,
that doesn't
cool.
include the youth as well. So he kind of is still doing the similar stuff.
Okay, what state are you going to?
We are currently in Colorado and we're moving to Michigan.
Okay. Yeah, slight adjustment, but
Yeah.
not as radical as it could be. And
Hmm.
and you're a mom. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have a little 1 year old, and it's really crazy to say that he's one because he only turned one about a week ago. And he's wonderful. We had a long fought journey to enjoying him in our lives. We struggled with infertility for many years, and out of the blue, God blessed us with a pregnancy, and we gave birth to him. We had a pretty challenging first, start to his life, but we're just praising God every day that he's here, and it's such a blessing. But we're also foster parents. So we have had a number of foster children in our home and have been doing that for 2.5-ish years now. And we plan to do it still when we move to Michigan, but it does require, going and getting relicensed and everything. But
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we plan to do
All
it.
right. Well, I'd love to go into that too, but I did have a show on that recently, so
Also,
I'll
a
hold
really
on.
great conversation.
Yes, that's so cool. It's so cool. So, and I think you had mentioned in your bio that you went into, your young adult life with a lot of debt, right?
Mhm.
So, college debt, I'm assuming, right? And did that was, a lot of folks, like, my kids included, they've now paid theirs off, but all their friends, I know their friends, and it's scary, right? Well, that's not true. My daughter's boyfriend, he has a huge college debt still, and he's doing a great job chunking away at it. But was that threatening to you, or you just felt like, nah, I got this, or you've learned enough about money management, you weren't worried, or what's that like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely overwhelming, especially because, like so many students going into college, you take student loans out and you really don't know what they are. You just know that they're helping you go to college and get a degree and everything. And my parents were really the ones who kind of set them up for me. And I just kind of had to sign something saying, like, yes, I agree to pay these back. So I did not have a really great education on what they were and how to tackle them. And so I kind of went through this process of learning all about it by myself because, again, like I wanted to get excellent at managing my money. And so I just kind of started doing all of the conventional things that people were saying online and in books and everything. I love reading still. And I learned how to kind of quickly pay off debt. So it wasn't something that really scared me or stressed me out. It was more, I saw it as a challenge to be conquered. I knew that it was something that I had to get over, just a hurdle to jump over. And I was very determined to do that. I don't know if people know like the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 3, which is
Yeah,
all
me
about like
too.
achieving and, accomplishing things and checking things off. And so for me, I just saw it as something else to do. And
Okay.
yeah, it was around like 30 to 40 grand in student loans. So it wasn't like a small amount, but yeah.
But you were fortunately able to get into a profession that could pay it off. I mean, it's like you go to college and you major in history or English or whatever, and you come out and you can't get a job, or a lot of majors, even marketing, but that's flooded with people or whatever, and then it's very stressful, or you go into something and it's minimum wage or just a tad above,
Mhm.
So I know that you have a um, online course. Do you talk about that in that online course?
Do I talk about
Like
like
how to get rid of debt, that kind of thing.
yes, yeah. So
Okay.
we go through like the 5 pillars of biblical money management in this order basically. It's give, live, save, owe, and grow. And so giving is all about generosity. Living is kind of like a budget and how to just manage your money day to day. Give, live, save. Saving is obviously like emergency funds and saving for the future. Owing is debt and debt management and using debt wisely. And then growing your money is talking more about that building wealth. And also an important element that I really truly believe needs to be a part of every believer's money management process and plan is to have a finish line for their finances. So when can we say we have enough money set aside for retirement or whatever our goals are in life? in order to stop like hustling so much, or even like anything else. Like once you set that finish line, you can kind of say anything beyond this that I earn and bring in, I can give away freely, knowing that my goals and things are met, and now I can just bless others with this abundance.
I find it intriguing that you have this five step and you begin with give. You
Mm,
don't you don't begin with, how you pay off your debt or
mhm.
budgeting. So, yeah, tell me about that. That I can guess, but I'd love to hear. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. There are a lot of financial professionals, whether they say that they're Christian or not, who really don't have this focus on generosity first. But I think that so many of us as believers agree with the fact that generosity really is like a key element. It's a staple pillar for everything within biblical money management. We all know we're supposed to give and be generous, and we see the greatest example of generosity in what Jesus did for us, right? Like, well, first off, God so loved the world that he gave. So he gave Jesus to us, and then Jesus went and paid his own life on the cross for us. And we obviously can never get to that place of being so generous, like as generous as Jesus, but we can continue to model ourselves after him and become more like him through our radical generosity. And I think there's an important element here about generosity that there's some big names out there who talk about this idea of outrageous generosity and how it comes after you have paid off your debt and after you've saved up for your goals and after you've kind of figured everything else out for yourself. But I think that the word outrageous generosity, like that phrase, really should be referring to biblical generosity in the sense that biblical generosity really requires a sacrifice on our part. Being sacrificial is what makes our generosity like Jesus's, because Jesus had to sacrifice everything. And he also asks us to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations sometimes with our own finances. And it's an element of trust. If I give away this money, will God continue to provide for my needs and all of the things that I have on my plate? And so outrageous generosity really isn't like the amount that you give. And that's what a lot of people think is like, well, if I pay off my debt, I'll be able to free up more money to be able to give more away. And that's outrageous generosity. But really, I think the element of outrageousness, if that's a word, I guess, would be the amount sacrifice. Like, how big of a sacrifice are you making? And if it's not hard for you to give money away, I would challenge you to consider like maybe it's not outrageous or biblical generosity that you are practicing, and try to get to that place where it feels a little uncomfortable to give more away. And so that's why we talk about generosity first and foremost within Redeeming Your Finances, which is my online school, is because I really think it needs to come first. And yeah, and doing it just the way that Jesus, I think, would do.
So, how do you have a budget, which means how you're going to balance what you take in and what you give out, correct? I'm not a
Mhm.
money person, but yeah. Okay. So, how do you have that and yet we're saying be outrageously generous? So, when I hear, and sacrificial, same thing you're saying. So, if I'm sacrificial to me, that's saying, I'm actually going to give away more than I take in. Is that true or false? Is that wrong thinking?
I don't think it necessarily means giving away more than you're taking in. I think that, you know, God gives us money for many different reasons. One of those is to be able to provide well for our families. A really great example of this is the Proverbs 31 woman, who we often look at for tips on marriage or motherhood or something like that. But when you look at her life and like her work, her actual like career, you see that she actually was a real estate investor. She invested in a field and she made good money, but she took really good care of her family. You know, she clothes them in really fine linens and she feeds them. They don't have to worry about the oil going out in their lamps. And then she's also considering how she can be generous to her community and taking care of her community. And so, yeah, I don't think we ever need to. I mean, I first off, I really should say, like, the disclaimer is God could call someone to give away everything. We have
Yeah.
examples of that throughout the Bible, but he doesn't do that for everyone, right? There are still so many examples of wealthy people in both the New and Old Testament where you see that God blesses them with plenty of provisions. But one of the things that we also notice about many of these people is that they are using their wealth for something other than just their own goals and their own comforts and desires, is that they're looking for opportunities to continue to participate in kingdom advancing work. And so I think that is also, it's just like that. It's a shift, a mindset shift to think about kingdom purposed activities first, like prioritizing that first, but that also looks like taking care of our families. And so we have to bring in an element also of just contentment and knowing like, okay, it would be nice to have some of these comforts and luxuries in life, but maybe I can give some of these things up in order to do X, Y, and Z for my church or for a missionary or for the family next door or being able to pay for a kid's camp, like so that, you know, someone can go enjoy camp, summer camp this summer or whatever. There's so many opportunities and it's just a matter of kind of being aware and alert. And that was something that I struggled with at first because I really thought that excellent money management meant like going after my own goals hardcore, like just having that intense focus to achieve everything. And that's what it meant to glorify God with my money. I kind of in the beginning really missed that element of like, no, it's not just about achieving the goals that God maybe has given me. It's also like opening my eyes to the needs of those around me and, you know, allowing my heart to break for the things that break God's heart as well.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. Your heart breaking for the things that breaks God's heart as well. It's great. Yeah, the last episode that all of you have hopefully listened to. If not, you can go back to it. She kind of actually ties into what you're saying because she always is looking for uh, where is God moving around me right now, and what part am I to have play in that? And it's just so beautiful. It's what you're really saying with the whole generosity piece and our money is God. Um, how do you want me to use this money? Where are you at work? Where you want my focus to be? If I have $3,000 to work with, say, for a certain period of time, um, where you want me to allot that? And I think we're almost afraid to ask that, don't you think, Katie?
Yeah.
Because God will say, well, you don't really need the Hulu account. You're doing fine. You've got this one, that you've got plenty of entertainment. I've been good to you. Do you really need to add that? But I think so often we don't ask. We
Mm-hmm.
we sit there and think, well, yeah, could I fit this? Okay, it's only $10 a month or whatever. That's not bringing God into it. That's not saying, God, do you want? Because if you pray and you don't have a peace about it, and you can share, how we go about bringing God into this or like listening to him with this, and he's like, no, you have no peace. Then that's right around the time somebody comes along and says, could you help me with this mission trip? Or I just started this nonprofit. Could you help? Or,
Mm-hmm.
right? Am I kind of on the money here? On the
Yeah.
money. Ha, there you go. There's a phrase. Yeah. So where does like seeking God in this, what does that look like to you?
Yeah. I think it is. It requires a lot of prayer, a lot of intentionality. When students go through the Redeeming Your Finances program, they go through a process of reviewing the last few months of their expenses and really understanding their own spending habits.
Mm.
And we do this kind of in-depth process of asking ourselves, like, what really is a need and what really is a want. And it has to be very prayerful because I think what is so special about finances is that there is no one size fits all with it. You know, what God calls you to do with your money, Sue, is going to look very different from what he asks me to do with mine because you
Yeah.
and I are, first off, in different stages of life. We live in different places of the world. We have different people who God put before us. We have different giftings and talents and even just passions. There are things that break your heart that, are
Yeah.
different from the things that break my heart. But it's just so beautiful. We know this as Christians that we are all a part of the body of Christ and we all have different parts to play. And so God might be calling you to participate in kingdom advancing work differently than me. But we need to be intentional and prayerful about how we do that and simply, coming before God when we see our spending habits and look back to say, okay, yeah, I have been kind of spending a lot of money on these entertainment expenses that maybe I really don't need, or maybe I can find a new way to entertain myself through spending more time with others or going out and volunteering or whatever that might look like and and just being intentional about it and really bringing into the conversation like what is God put before me and what is he really truly calling me to and how can I start to almost like die to yourself, like where can I die to myself, and that phrase of like putting aside some of the things that maybe they give you a little bit of life, but they're not really life-giving things. I mean, Hulu or just streaming things are an easy target, right? Because so many of us mindlessly participate in those activities. And it's like, can you save those, what is it, like $10 to $15 a month? Could you save that and go and spend that money every month going out to coffee with a friend where you pay for their coffee? So that's like a $15 trip right there. You get a snack and coffee and you just spend time with them. And it's just a lot of asking and reevaluating and praying. And yeah, it's not easy. I wouldn't say it's like okay, you're gonna pray and God is going to reveal to you immediately,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we kind of chuckle at this too because there are probably so many examples of that in our own lives and in different areas where we're praying and we're trying to hear from God and discerning his voice, and you're just like, I don't know. And sometimes it's just like praying, and if you have two different options, just try to go for the best one at the time. And God will, like, he'll use the Holy Spirit to help you course correct when you need to be adjusted, but it's being available and open to have those kind of scary prayers to be like, is this really how you want me to be spending my money, God? Or is it somewhere else? Do I need to give something up in order to follow you more closely? So, yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I've heard that there's more uh things written about money in the Bible. Do you have that little statistic then? I don't know, the Gospels mentioned or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I forget the percentage, but like the majority of Jesus's parables alone like reference money in some way, shape, or form. And there's over 2,300 Bible verses
Mhm.
that reference money, wealth, possessions, finances in any shape. I mean, there's so many that you can point back to that bring up money. And people are like, oh, well, it's because God wants to give us the exact blueprint of how to manage our money. Okay, maybe, sure, he does give us some truths about like, okay, if you first want to build a tower, then you need to understand if you have enough money to pay for it over time. That's in Luke. And that is a great example of like having a budget. Do you have enough money to pay for all the things that you have on your plate? But I think more so than giving us like just general money advice is that God knows that money is powerful. Money does give us a certain element of power. And because of that, it is very dangerous for our souls. And it can so easily become an idol for us because it does give us a sense of power to do a lot of things. I mean, you think about all the corrupt things that people do when they have a lot of wealth. It's because they can kind of buy their way through things. And God knows that even on the grandest form of someone who's very, very wealthy, but even down to the person who doesn't actually even have a cent to their name, money can be an idol because it depends on what we're continuously worrying about and going after and what drives our days. And so we, yeah, money is really like the perfect idol because it really does give us that sense of power. And we oftentimes ask it to do for us what only God can do, like give us security and hope and just meaning and purpose and worth.
So, in your course, do you talk about how to really recognize these idols, how to see like a warning signal or something?
Yeah. Yeah, so the course kind of goes through, each of these pillars, and we talk about the biblical side of each of them. What does the Bible actually say about this, and how can we glorify God in this area of our finances? And then we talk about like the practical, how do we implement this day to day? And so we go through a lot of different reflective activities to recognize those things. But another great piece that I have added to redeeming your finances is coaching, is just getting on calls with myself to have these conversations because again, it can be really hard to go through and just read or take a course or something like that and understand what things might like how they might be playing out in your own life and where you might need to change. And so I have always found that the students and the clients I've worked with over the years, the ones who find the most like long-term lasting results, like, I hate to use the word success because, we define success in so many different ways, but just they have these lasting results in how they change the way that they view and use money after we have really sat down to kind of go through it together. I actually call it like the mentorship element of my school where I act like a mentor with you, where it's not like I'm going to tell you exactly how to spend your money or where to spend your money or how to set your budget up, but we're going to have these conversations that allow you to do a little bit more of the thinking so that way
Yeah.
one day when we're not working together, you know how to have those reflective conversations with God on your own or with your spouse or with your family and can kind of do it by yourself. And so I yeah, I used to just do an online course, but I found that people didn't get the lasting results that they were hoping without working with me or even just like another coach in general, like someone who's going to kind of walk alongside you, keep you accountable, and help you ask those hard questions. And even maybe to help you like open your eyes a bit more to the areas that you might be kind of blinded to. Maybe you didn't realize that somewhere, like some area of your spending was leading you astray or maybe isn't the best use of your financial resources. Again, I'm never going to tell someone like do or don't spend your money in a certain way, but just
Right.
ask those deeper questions to get to the root of what might be the biggest challenge to your money management.
Yeah, one of the things I'm sure you talk about, but as you're saying, helping us to process, right?
Yeah.
Individually would be thinking about, well, what, especially as couples, what are your priorities? And what are your values?
Mm,
Like when it comes to family, when it comes to fun, when it comes to uh, giving, meaning, helping others, and what does that look like? And so
mhm.
I would think just having that conversation with you would be, as you dig that out of the person, would really help them be able to make some decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really I mean, I've experienced it in my own life, and I'm sure you have as well, Sue. Like when you have someone who is really someone who's gospel centered, who has kind of gone before you, or just has this open-mindedness to hear from the Lord on your behalf almost. And just the wisdom that can flow from those conversations and from those relationships can be really valuable. And I think no matter what area it is in our lives, I think
Yeah.
having some kind of a mentor, help you, whether it's in your relationships or your parenting or your work or finances, can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is not necessarily a Christian, though. They have financial planners who are Christians, but my husband and I, we did seek out a financial planner after we got some inheritance, and it's wild to me what they can do. They
Mhm.
actually could, through a program, they can show you with your current how you're investing, what to save, what the value of your home, blah, 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 how much you earn, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, your age, health, blah, blah, blah. They plug all that in and they tell you, okay, currently what this looks like is on the track that you're taking by the time you're 95. This is so crazy to me. At the least, you'll still have this much. At the most, you would have this, and the average would be here. I'm like, what the heck? But they can
Yeah.
actually. And then I told him, I go, well, some of my family lives over 100. Could you put that in? And he could.
Just in
So
case. Yeah, that's
interesting,
great.
right? That what I guess AI it can do. But it was actually helpful because that's what I want to ask you and why you really have to pray about these things. We don't know how long we're going to live,
Hmm.
and we don't know how healthy we're going to be. We can look at family history. That's important. Is there a history of cancer, blah, blah, blah. You can look at our own health right now. Um, but we don't know. And I think when you're 25, you're not thinking about that. 35, I don't know when you start thinking about that, but I know we didn't really, we were just surviving for most of our lives, but definitely maybe when you start hitting 50s, maybe a little before, you start thinking, um, is this enough?
Hmm.
At what age do you find people start to think, um, are we gonna make it? I mean, is it really young now, even? You know? And
I I would hope that it would be younger, right? Because we
okay.
know that when we start taking our finances more seriously at a younger age, meaning not living in the kind of YOLO lifestyle, right? You only live once, where you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants and spending money here and there. And that can be so harmful for our long-term financial health when we don't get serious sooner. I mean, the best time to start managing your money wisely is yesterday, and the second best time is right now, is today. And though I will say the majority of the people that come to me saying, I really need to figure this out, tend to be in their 50s. And it's not to say that it's too late, but it's going to be much more challenging to make up for the lost time if you are just getting started then thinking about
Yeah.
your retirement. And so it really is best to start thinking about it when you kind of get your first job, right? When you're able to start maybe putting a little bit of money aside, even just in savings, or trying to start a house fund, or obviously like building an emergency fund and paying off debt, and really starting to hit and knock out some of those goals earlier. So that way later you can really kind of pick up the pace. A lot of us know about like compound interest, and that it works best when it kind of matures over time. It's kind of like a fine wine or a cheese, right? It's like you want it to age. And that's why, starting earlier can be helpful,
Yeah.
because of compound interest alone, in the fact that like it just grows a lot better when you start earlier. So I would say maybe people are waking up a little bit more, like who are younger, but I would still say that it's just kind of the nature of being young. You kind of think like, "Ah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine and I can
Right.
save it till tomorrow," kind of a thing. And it really ends up being rather unfortunate if, you do get to your even like your 40s or 50s and you're starting to think like, "Oh my gosh, I have to send my kids to college and I haven't even planned for my own retirement." And it just can add a lot more stress than, at least starting really small. Like even if it's like
Yeah.
$50 a month or something, but just starting somewhere so that way you have the time value of money where it
Yeah.
grow with you.
There's so many hard decisions, like
Hmm.
do I, one family's like, oh, I have to really do everything to pay my kids' college. And then like my parents did that and my husband's parents like didn't pay a dime. That was their mentality. You want to go to college, you go work and pay it, which is easier said than done these days. But so do you t tackle those kind of things and you just have a discussion and help them to come to their own conclusion as God leads, or is there biblical things that they can look at with that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it is different per family, and where God leads you. My general recommendation, and I don't want to use the word advice because this is not financial advice, right? But generally speaking, I actually recommend to families to focus first on their own retirement and what their long-term plan is for, yeah, like some of those questions you brought up, like, are we going to be healthy? Will I need to be in some sort of assisted living home? Or will I need a lot of, like, will my bills be really high because of medical expenses? Will I live with my kids? If we don't answer some of those questions now and plan for retirement, no matter where it is in our journey, like whether it's in a few years or decades or something, if we're not planning for that first, and then we get to retirement, and maybe we did pay for our kids' college education, or maybe a little bit of it or something, if we don't have the money set aside for retirement, it typically ends up falling on the shoulders of the children. It becomes their burden to have to then fund a retirement or assisted
Yeah.
living, something for those parents. And so that's why I often recommend that it is more loving to your children to focus on yourself in that situation. It seems a little backwards, like, oh, I'm going to focus on myself and my retirement, but it allows your family to hopefully not have as much stress when you get to that place because you've thought through all of your own needs and have the money set aside for that. But there are some families who choose to send their kids to college debt free, and that is a wonderful blessing for their kids because maybe then they will do better financially and have the financial resources to provide for their parents in later years. And maybe that means living, having their parents live with them. So I, even though it can be kind of awkward and uncomfortable and maybe even weird to have those conversations with your parents, I would highly recommend having them. And it was something that as a young married individual, like my husband and I are both the oldest siblings and feel very like responsible for our families in general,
Mm.
just being the
Yeah.
oldest siblings. And so we're like, well, it'd be very interesting if both of our parents ended up relying on us as their first, go-to person as their oldest child. And so we did kind of have some awkward conversations of like, I know we don't really want to talk about this, but when you guys get to the point where you need some sort of assistance, and yeah, it's funny because our all of our parents are just so active and lively and stuff, and so it's just kind of weird to think about that. But yeah, it's those conversations that kind of need to be had at some point. Hopefully before you get to that place, right?
Yeah. And we weigh in the fact of there's cultural differences, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like my friends, I was talking to them in Lebanon and I said, "Oh yeah, my son's moving out. He's 28 and we've encouraged him to stay here. He wasn't always here that whole time, but when he moved back in, to help him so that he could have enough, get into savings. He's in film, and you have to put a lot of money into that. He's a writer to make it happen. And so he did reluctantly, but he pays rent and all that, and which is great. But we love having him here. He loves being here. But anyway, at this job he just got, he's enables him to get a great discount on that company's housing. So he's moving out. And so I'm telling my friends about this and how they're like, are you glad he's moving out? Like, I said, no, but I think it's good for him and he likes that. And they just said, oh, we never do that in our country. You
Mhm.
stay at home until you're married. It doesn't matter how old you are. And I know in China they do that. In so many places we do that. And the same thing with, so many countries I go to, you will live with your kids when
Mhm.
you're older. It's not a discussion.
I think
So,
that's beautiful. It is
yeah,
something that I think that we've kind of lost here in America over the generations, and I think there is something so beautiful about it. But I think it also helps set up that next generation really well. I mean, like you said, your son was saving lots of money by being
mhm,
home with you, and that allows him to have a slight leg up when he does move away from home. And
right.
that's not something that all of us can say for our own situations, is that, oh yeah, I was able to save thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years by living
Yeah,
with my family. And I, it's sad that our culture looks down on that.
yeah,
And it is kind of slightly taboo when you're out of college and you're living with your
yeah.
parents. But I think
That's
it can be really
changing, though.
beautiful.
It is changing, especially because of debt.
Yeah.
Like it allowed him to get out of debt and, like you said, save a lot. So, yeah. Anyway, there's all those factors as well that you have to bring in. Well, this is really cool. We're running out of time here, but I just want to share how you say that your online school is to learn how to manage your money using skills rooted in the gospel. If you can just explain that in our last few minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. The school really is centered around two primary principles, which are kingdom advancement and contentment. And so when we look at how to manage our money in light of the gospel, we need to continuously reflect on, is this advancing the kingdom? And that doesn't mean that we're always just giving away all of our money. There's a lot of different ways that we can glorify God through our use of money, but also, are we fostering contentment with the way that we're managing it? Meaning, are we thinking more about God's kingdom over our own kingdoms? Because our culture today has us thinking more about ourselves and our comforts and what we've got going on, within our own families and our own walls versus seeking beyond
Yeah,
ourselves and saying, this is enough for me. I'm going to go and help someone else, or just thinking a little bit less of yourselves, which I think is all about, what Jesus is about. So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking, like you said, it's not just giving money, but we might be choosing between two jobs, that one job pays more, but the other job will allow you time to
Mhm.
really be active in your church or do some kind of ministry. So
Yeah.
there's all those factors too when we're making decisions. Or like do we live in Colorado? Do we live in Michigan? And
It's a
where in
big financial
Michigan?
difference.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something you really have to think about. Should we do that? That could really change, as you put, the giving aspect or, that kind of thing. But maybe giving less financially, but giving more of your time
Mhm.
to ministry or for the ministry to grow more. Yeah, there's a lot to consider.
There
Or
is.
even what your husband, you're moving to work with the next gen. That is so, 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 so needed right now. So that's just awesome that you make that choice, even if it's to a financial cost. So it's beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Katie. Tell our wonderful listeners again how to contact you and if they want to jump on about your online school.
Yeah. Redeemingyourfinances.com is where they can find the financial school. I also have resources on there totally for free for those who want to get started somewhere. So, one of my favorite resources is just a gospel-centered budgeting planner. So, it kind of helps you start walking through what does it look like to build a financial system that is focused on kingdom advancing activities. And so you can grab that for free there. I also have a Facebook group called Christian Money Managers, and I go live there once a week with different trainings to help teach people and equip them more with these kinds of lessons and skills. And yeah, it's really great. So I hope to see you guys around there.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much. I'm sure most of you have really gotten a lot out of this and have not had this kind of thinking before. So I really appreciate you coming on, Katie, and you guys share this with others. And if you, I check out the website and see what kind of resources you can get through that. Okay, everybody, well, have a great week, and I'm looking forward to being back with y'all next week. Okay, Katie, again, thanks so much.
Thanks, Sue.